Welcome to Wawasanwire. Today, we're talking about the significant recent cabinet decision regarding alcohol regulations in school halls. Okay, let's get right into this. Just a few days ago, honestly, the whole country seemed to be watching this unfold. A major controversy just blew up over school rental policies. And this wasn't small stuff. It really touched on, funding, culture, even tradition. It became a massive political headache pretty much overnight. Needed a quick fix.
It really did. And the whole discussion, it kicked off with Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim making a very strong statement in Parliament.
Great.
The initial message, it was crystal clear. Government schools strictly prohibited from hosting any events involving alcohol. Full stop.
Even if they were just renting the hall out to, external groups.
Exactly. That was the initial directive. Even if the hall was rented out to, say, private parties for functions totally unrelated to the school itself.
Wow. Okay, but why such a hard line right off the bat? What was the thinking there?
Well, the core argument presented was philosophical, really. It centered on the mission of education itself. The idea was that activities like serving alcohol or gambling, for that matter, they just fundamentally clash with what schools are supposed to be about, teaching and nurturing students.
So protecting the school environment, making it sort of a sacred space.
That was the essence of it, yes. Yeah. Reinforcing the sanctity of the school setting. The government was even signaling they might tighten up the general rules for renting out school facilities across the board to prevent this kind of thing. It was a very clear line in the sand.
Okay, but here's where it gets really messy, doesn't it? Because that principle, however well-intentioned, it immediately poked a massive hornet's nest, particularly within the Chinese community.
Precisely. And it's crucial here to understand the different types of schools we're talking about. The initial policy seemed aimed broadly at government schools.
Right.
But many Chinese vernacular schools, the national type ones, they fall into a slightly different category. They're government aided.
Aided. Okay. So they get some government money, but not everything.
That's right. They receive government funds for operational costs, like teacher salaries, but often their buildings, their infrastructure, that's heavily dependent on community fundraising efforts.
Which brings us to this buy school to support school system. That's the key funding model, isn't it? Can you break that down? It sounds critical.
It absolutely is critical. Essentially, buy school to support school means when government funding isn't enough for, say, building maintenance or maybe adding a new block or even just keeping up the hall itself.
Yeah.
The community has to step in. They fundraise, through alumni, through boards of trustees, and renting out the school hall. That often becomes their single biggest source of non-government income. It's vital.
And these rentals, they're often for big events, right? Like wedding dinners?
Exactly. Wedding dinners, big association banquets, cultural celebrations, events where traditionally serving alcohol is, pretty standard.
So you ban alcohol, and bam, you've just wiped out the main reason people rent these halls. We're talking serious money here, aren't we? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of ringgit per event.
Easily. That revenue isn't just pocket money. It pays for essential things, maybe fixing the roof, paying for extra security, or funding programs the Ministry of Education doesn't fully cover. A ban like that, it felt like an existential threat to their development.
Right. So the political reaction must have been immediate.
Oh, absolutely swift. You had figures like Lim Guanang, the member of parliament for Bagan, speaking out very strongly. He described the prime minister's statement as causing a deep dissatisfaction.
And his argument wasn't just about the money, was it?
No, not at all. It was financial, yes, but also heavily cultural and, frankly, political. He made the point that many of these school halls were actually built using private money, donations from the Chinese community itself over decades.
So the community felt like, we built this, and now you're telling us how we can use it.
That was definitely part of the sentiment. He argued that imposing this ban on a traditional social custom wasn't just hitting school finances, it was undermining institutions built by the community and potentially damaging Malaysia's whole multicultural fabric.
Okay, so politically, this is now a serious problem for the unity government. You've got a major community feeling threatened, key coalition partners raising alarms, something had to give, and fast.
Correct. This is where the coalition structure really came into play. The cabinet became the crucial venue for sorting this out.
And specific ministers stepped up.
Yes. Given the coalition dynamics, 5 ministers representing parties with strong ties to the Chinese community took the lead. You had the Minister of Transport, Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Housing and Local Government, Tourism, Arts and Culture, and Human Resources.
So a significant group.
A very significant group. They acted immediately, taking these really deep concerns, both financial and cultural, straight to the top to the cabinet discussion.
And you mentioned the speed. This wasn't weeks of deliberation, was it? It sounds like it happened almost instantly.
It felt very rapid, yes. It wasn't about setting up committees or drafting long policy papers. These leaders conveyed the urgency. They argued that a solution was needed now that respected the unique situation, the traditions, and the funding realities of these specific government-aided schools.
They essentially highlighted that a one-size-fits-all policy just wouldn't work here.
Precisely. And the outcome? It was quite conclusive. The cabinet reached a unanimous decision. Chinese school halls nationwide would be specifically exempted from this alcohol ban.
Exempted.
Now,
So back to how things were.
essentially, yes. They agreed to maintain the status quo. The Ministry of Education was instructed not to bring in any new rules restricting these events in those specific schools, provided, of course, they followed existing local council rules for serving alcohol at events.
And what's really interesting, politically speaking, is the apparent consensus. Reports suggested that ministers from other parties, including the United Malays National Organization, actually supported this exemption.
That's right. There seemed to be a quick cross-party understanding within the cabinet that maintaining the status quo for these particular schools was necessary. It showed a rapid political alignment to, well, diffuse the situation and respect those long-standing community funding practices.
So looking at the bigger picture then, how does this whole episode reflect on governing a place like Malaysia? You've got this clash between a principle, no alcohol in schools, and the pragmatic need to support how these community schools actually operate.
It's a classic balancing act, isn't it? The initial policy perhaps didn't fully account for the unique ecosystem of these government-aided vernacular schools. It tried to apply a broad principle that, while maybe suitable for standard government facilities, had unintended consequences for these specific institutions.
So it really demonstrates coalition politics in action. Prime Minister sets out a principle, but the political reality, the feedback from partners representing specific communities, forces a very quick adjustment.
Exactly. It showed the system responding. It required a swift, pragmatic pivot away from the initial hardline to acknowledge these crucial cultural and financial factors. You could almost call it a necessary course correction to avoid a much bigger political crisis.
A crisis that could have strained the unity government's relationship with a very important part of the electorate.
Indeed. So the final decision really reaffirms the idea of a status quo for these unique, established institutions. It's an acknowledgement that their funding model, built around community events, is legitimate and needs protecting.
It suggests that sometimes policy has to be flexible. It has to adapt to Malaysia's diverse social reality, especially where culture and finance are so closely linked.
And the speed of that reversal is quite telling. It really underscores how responsive the cabinet mechanism can be when faced with significant political pressure and clear arguments about community impact.
Yeah, that speed really does highlight just how vital these hall rentals are for these aided schools. It's not just supplementary income, it's core to their survival and stability. And it shows leaders have to react fast when those core interests are threatened.
Absolutely. It proved that community representation within the cabinet isn't just for show, it has real influence.
So looking back, it's quite a case study, isn't it?
It definitely is. This moment serves as a pretty significant example of how consensus building, representation, and frankly, political pragmatism within the cabinet structure can navigate these really tricky issues where policy, culture, and school funding all collide. Ultimately, the choice was for stability and adaptive governing.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.